major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Council of the Nation has welcomed the content of the speech by President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, reaffirming its constant support for all the steps taken by the President of the Republic. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has expressed its deep concern at the ongoing Zionist bombardment of the central area of Gaza. And the Arab Parliament is due to hold an extraordinary session on Palestine later today devoted to the situation in Gaza. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First, the Council of the Nation has welcomed the speech by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, delivered on Monday to the representatives of the two chambers of Parliament at the Palace of Nation, reaffirming the Council's constant support for all the steps taken by the President of the Republic, according to a press release issued by the Council of the Nation. The President of the Council of the Nation, or the Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Salah Koujil, chaired a meeting of the Council's Bureau, extended to the Presidents of the parliamentary groups, the Presidents of the Standing Committees, and the Parliamentary Controller, the day after the participation of the Council of the Nation in the proceedings of the extraordinary session of the two chambers of Parliament held on Monday at the Palace of Nations here in Algiers at the invitation of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the same source stated. The Bureau of the Enlarged Council expressed its deep consideration for the content of the keynote speech delivered by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to the representatives of the people in both houses of Parliament, a speech that the President of the Republic intends to perpetuate as an annual tradition to highlight the achievements made and those in prospect, but also to keep the nation informed of the facts and achievements accomplished at both national and international level. The Speaker of the Nation, or the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, has said in Algiers that the speech given by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to the two chambers of Parliament gives new hope to the skills, young people, and faithful children of this country. In a statement to the press on the sidelines of the opening of the Second Ordinary General Assembly of the Higher Council of Youth, held at the Abdeltif Rahal International Conference Center, Ibrahim Boughali said that the speech by the President of the Republic was the bearer of a vision, an economic strategy, and an action plan that have been carefully studied for the benefit of skills and young people. To the Middle East file now, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has expressed its deep concern at the ongoing Zionist bombardment of the central area of Gaza, which has cost the lives of more than 100 Palestinians in the last 24 hours. Saad Boughazez has more details.
The spokesman for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Saif Magango, said in a statement that what was particularly worrying is the fact that this latest intense bombardment comes after Zionist forces ordered residents of the southern Gaza Valley to move towards central Gaza and Tel Sultan in Rafah. Saif Magango referred to reports that the Zionist Air Force had conducted more than 50 raids in the center of the Gaza Strip from 24th to 25th December, which included 3 refugee camps, El Bureij, Nusayrat, and El Maghazi. 2 raids hit 7 residential buildings in the El Maghazi camp, killing around 86 Palestinians and injuring others. It is estimated that an unknown number of people are still trapped under the rubble. According to the NGO Doctors Without Borders, the total death toll from the raids on the El Maghazi and El Bureij camps has since risen to at least 131 amid an already catastrophic and worsening humanitarian situation. The spokesman for the UN Human Rights Office said that all the roads linking the 3 camps have been destroyed, which has hampered the arrival of aid to those in need, and that shelters and hospitals are still operating at a low level and are extremely overcrowded and under-resourced.
The Arab Parliament is due to hold an extraordinary session on Palestine later today, devoted notably to the situation in Gaza, the scene of a barbaric aggression by the Zionist occupation army since 7 October, the institution said in a press release. This event is part of the institution's ongoing efforts to support the Palestinian cause and its people in the face of Zionist aggression. The Arab Parliament refers to ongoing efforts at all levels and in all fora to support the Palestinian cause, notably the right of an independent state. The Israeli occupation forces have demolished 5 homes in the village of Furush Beit Dajan, east of the northern city of Nablus in the occupied West Bank, some built before the 1967 Zionist occupation of the West Bank. The head of the village council told the Wafa news agency that soldiers broke into the village accompanied by a bulldozer and proceeded to demolish 5 houses, some built before 1967, in addition to 3 water ponds used to irrigate crops. The UN has announced the appointment of an outgoing Dutch minister, Sigrid Kaag, to the post of coordinator of humanitarian aid and reconstruction in Gaza following a Security Council resolution on aid to the Palestinian territory bombed and besieged by the Zionist entity. She is due to take up her duties on 8 January, the same source added. And the Palestinian telecommunications company has reported that communications and internet services in the Gaza Strip have been interrupted as Zionist bombardment continued. This is according to a statement issued by the company, which provides fixed mobile and internet communication services in the Palestinian market. The company stated in its press release a complete interruption of fixed telecommunications and internet services in the Gaza Strip as a result of the continued aggression. Our technical teams are working to restore services despite the difficult conditions on the ground. The Zionist weapon or ongoing aggression on the besieged Gaza Strip goes unabated for the 82nd day running, with the latest reports putting the number of casualties at 20,915 and that of wounded at more than 54,918. There were renewed attacks in Khan Yunis overnight, this time around the vicinity of the Nasser Hospital and the Jordanian Field Hospital. There has been heavy and relentless artillery shelling in that area, creating lots of concern among local residents. And the U.S. Central Command says the U.S. military has shot down 12 one-way attack drones, 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles, and 2 land attack cruise missiles fired by the Houthis over a 10-hour period. As a result, business is severely disrupted. Local authorities say the number of ships passing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait has dropped by almost 35%. Dozens of shipping vessels have been stranded for 6 days, many of them do not know when they are going to get clearance to leave. Now, the Director General of the World Health Organization, WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has said that the conflict in Sudan has shaken the health system in this Northeast African country. The conflict in Sudan has forced 70% of health centers in areas affected by the fighting to close or significantly reduce their services, and 11 million people are in need of emergency health care, Tedros Adhanom explained. And in the Western Sahara File, the Association of Friends of the Sahrawi People in the Balearic Islands has called on the Spanish government to renew its position on the question of Western Sahara and expressed a solidarity with the Sahrawis who are fighting for the independence of their country. The details in this report by our colleague Saad Bouazi.
According to the Sahrawi press agency SPS, the association organized a demonstration on Monday in Plaza de Corte in the city of Palma in support of the Sahrawi people and to express its solidarity with the Sahrawi political prisoners arbitrarily imprisoned by the Moroccan occupation regime. Catalina Rosello, president of the association, said, "We want to stand by the Sahrawi families and let them know that they are not alone." Participants in the rally condemned Morocco's repression in the occupied territories, calling on the Spanish government to review its position on Western Sahara, in which it supports Rabat's disastrous expansionist plan. The main aim of the association was to express its concern at the grave situation facing the Sahrawi population in the occupied territories since the resumption of the armed struggle in November 2020, added the president of the association. The gathering also included the lighting of candles in memory of Sahrawis who have disappeared since 1975. It was an opportunity to remember notably the disappearance of a group of young Sahrawis on 25th December 2005 following their arrest by the Moroccan occupation authorities. The determination of the Sahrawi people in their quest for independence and freedom was also underlined. As well as showing its support for the Sahrawi people, the association expressed its solidarity with the Palestinian people this year, denouncing the suffering caused by the genocide and barbarity of the Zionist entity in Gaza. The gathering ended with a minute's silence in memory of all the martyrs.
And finally, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received at the headquarters of the Ministry Niger's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Nigerians Abroad, Yao Bakari Sangre, as part of a working visit to Algeria. In a statement to the press following his meeting with Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf, Niger's Foreign Affairs Minister hailed the quality of the relations between Algeria and his country, evoking joint project and also the role Algeria has always played in the resolution of crises in this country, or the country has gone through. With this, we come to the end of it. We move on now to our weekly program. This is a special program on the COP28 event, compiled and presented by my colleague Jamal Silmani. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Thank you.
The United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, closed this year with an agreement that signals the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era by laying the ground for a swift, just and equitable transition underpinned by deep emissions cuts and scaled-up finance. In a demonstration of global solidarity, negotiators from nearly 200 parties came together in Dubai with a decision on the world's first global stocktake to ratchet up climate action before the end of the decade, with the overreaching aim to keep the global temperature limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber called the deal historic, but added that its true success would be in its implementation.
I am deeply grateful for all your hard work over the last 2 weeks, and in particular over the last 48 hours. Through the nights and the early hours of the morning, we worked collectively for consensus. The presidency listened, engaged, and guided. I promised I would roll up my sleeves, and I promised I would be with you every step of the way. And you, my colleagues and friends, you did step up. You showed flexibility, and you put common interest ahead of self-interest. We have the basis to make transformational change happen. Let us finish what we have started. Let us unite, act, and now deliver. Over the last couple of days, my team and I have undertaken extensive consultations with parties on the draft decision, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all delegations for their engagement and guidance in this process. I invite the CMA to adopt the draft decision entitled Outcome of the First Global Stocktake. Hearing no objection, it is so decided.
UN Climate Change Executive Secretary Simon Still, in his closing speech, said, "Whilst we didn't turn the page on the fossil fuel era in Dubai, this outcome is the beginning of the end."
Leaders in this room represent the majority of humanity. The decisions you make will help decide our collective futures. You have the power to move negotiations here in Dubai towards fair, just, and equitable outcomes. Your decisive action led to the decision to create the Loss and Damage Fund, an historic achievement. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says about 3.5 billion people, half of humanity, live in areas highly vulnerable to climate change. I don't need to tell you that huge numbers of those people are in G77 countries. It is deeply unjust that they should face the consequences of a problem they did not cause, and that those problems should be made worse by a multi-dimensional crisis of debt, cost of capital, inflation, and stagnant economic growth. Yet the progress I have seen across this group of countries is impressive. A number of countries are working to increase renewable energy, energy efficiency, and forest cover. This is action that benefits climate, but this is also development. It can lead to more economic growth, more jobs, and more opportunity.
The global stocktake is considered the central outcome of COP28 as it contains every element that was under negotiation and can now be used by countries to develop stronger climate action plans due by 2025. The stocktake recognizes the science that indicates global greenhouse gas emissions need to be cut 43% by 2030 compared to 2019 levels to limit global warming to 1.5%. But it notes parties are off track when it comes to meeting their Paris Agreement goals. Speaking to G77 Plus China meeting as part of COP28, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the world still can reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius target.
The final fight to keep 1.5 degrees alive is on, and we are battling for climate justice. These are fights we can win. This COP can end with a double objective: maximum ambition in mitigation and maximum ambition in relation to climate justice, namely taking into full account the interest of developing countries. What we must avoid at all costs is a compromise based on minimum ambition and mitigation and minimum ambition on climate justice. Because developing countries would be losing twice. Would be losing because there is no climate justice, and be losing because without effective mitigation, the dramatic impacts of climate change will be supported essentially by vulnerable populations in the global south. Also, I count on the G77 plus China to keep pushing for the change the world needs, to make this COP a game changer with maximum ambition to reduce emissions and maximum ambition on climate justice to the benefit of developing countries and their populations.
The stocktake calls on parties to take actions towards achieving, at a global scale, a tripling of renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency improvements by 2030. The list also includes accelerating efforts towards the phase-down of unabated coal power, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and other measures that drive the transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, with developed countries continuing to take the lead. In the short term, parties are encouraged to come forward with ambitious, economy-wide emission reduction targets covering all greenhouse gases, sectors, and categories, and aligned with the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit in their next round of climate action plans by 2025. The UN Secretary-General visited Nepal at the end of October and toured the Everest and Annapurna regions, taking stock of how the climate crisis impacts local communities and how fast ice is melting across the Himalayas. Speaking to a panel at COP28, Mr. Guterres has said we still can avoid a planetary burn by reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Just days ago, I was on the melting ice of Antarctica. Not long before, I was among the melting glaciers of Nepal. These two spots are far in distance, but united in crisis. Polar ice and glaciers are vanishing before our eyes, causing a shock the world over, from landslides and floods to rising seas. But this is just one symptom of the sickness bringing our climate to its knees, a sickness only you, global leaders, can cure. Earth's vital signs are failing. Record emissions, ferocious fires, deadly droughts, and the hottest year ever. We can guarantee it even we are still in November. We are miles from the goals of the Paris Agreement and minutes to midnight for the 1.5 degree limit. But it is not too late. We can, you can, prevent planetary crash and burn.
Several meetings were held during COP28. Kenyan President William Ruto brought together African leaders in Dubai for discussions to accelerate the green industrialization of Africa. The details with Miriam Barshi.
The African Green Initiative was launched at an event attended by the African leaders. The initiative aims to accelerate and develop green industries and businesses in Africa, promote climate change mitigation, and stimulate green economic growth on the continent. In his remarks, Mr. Ruto said that the initiative marks a concrete step towards the realization of the Nairobi Declaration by activating the multiplication of green industry clusters under the aegis of the private sector.
We have come here to profile our assets, whether it is in the Sahel region, where my brother, the president of Mauritania, comes from. The renewable assets of solar in that part of the world are immense, and we want to use those resources for the growth of our continent. Whether it is renewable assets in other parts of our country, whether it is renewable hydro energy in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, these are assets that are available to us, or the geothermal resources, wind, solar in East Africa, in Kenya, in Burundi, in Rwanda, in Tanzania. These are assets that are available to us as a continent, and we want to bring these assets onto the table so that we can leverage on these assets for industrialization of our continent, to create jobs, to create opportunity, and to make sure that we even the scales on the development of our globe.
Participants at the event also stressed that the green industrialization of Africa was essential to achieving the world's collective climate ambitions. Despite growth in renewables, annual investments need to double for Africa to achieve universal energy access and meet its energy and climate goals. Though Africa accounts for less than 3% of global renewables capacity, renewables development have grown substantially over the last decade, doubling between 2012 and 2022 to almost 59 gigawatts. The growth in the sector indicates huge potential for renewables in the coming years and decades. Wind energy capacity in Africa has been steadily increasing over the last decade and is expected to rise by over 900% based on projects announced to date. Speaking about the solar and wind energy, the director of Algeria Regan Asset, Federico Giniageli, explains.
In the last 10 years, there has been a lot of progress in technology development. It's been actually overwhelming. There's hundreds of startups that have come out, thousands of acronyms that you might hear about CCS, CCUS, BECS, director capture, DAX, that are popping up with millions and billions of dollars of investment. Now, when you, probably one of the messages I want to pass across is probably in line with what George is saying, is that the technology is important, but the race of decarbonization is not going to be lost by technology. This is something that I learned in my last 3 years as a technology director. I mean, the technology is there. I mean, we just sometimes, I don't know, probably as a human being, you just go and try to knock them down because they are not going to be a reliable solution. We need to test them. So when you bring that to Algeria, I mean, that means mainly, I would say, 3 areas of focus. One, I mean, we talk about that, I mean, the solar. Looking into the solar, also into new things that are coming out. Solar panels has been decreasing in cost 95% in the last 30 years. The efficiency has gone up to 50%, and the efficiency is going up. So that technology in improving efficiency is going to be key. There is even, I mean, companies right now that are thinking into photoelectrocatalysis. You can transform the sun immediately to hydrogen, among other ones. A second pillar, I would say, of course, the wind is something that needs to be worked. I mentioned about that the solars are in the top 5 countries, but the wind, I mean, have 2.5 times the capacity in here.
Africa's solar energy market, the fastest growing renewable energy resource on the continent, accounted for 57% of renewable investment between 2010 and 2021. The use of standalone off-grid solar system improved access to electricity on the continent by 62% between 2009 and 2019. According to Giorgio Vicini, Managing Director of Eni Algeria Technology and Partnership, are the solutions to reduce emissions.
Has been demonstrated that the most effective way to reduce emissions and to go towards energy transition is technology application, technology breakthrough. We are working a lot on that. We are working a lot on new technologies that could, like solar renewables, CCS, and hydrogen. We have also pilot projects, and we are working on that here in Algeria as well. So technology is going to be for the future the best way towards energy transition and towards climate change matters. And this is what we believe is possible to do on top of what we are already doing in Algeria in cooperation with all the main stakeholders, starting from Sonatrach, Arash, Al-Naft, and all the other partners that we are working in country.
A report highlighted the potential scale of investment opportunities available in Africa's renewable sector. Renewable investment in Africa grew at an average rate of more than 96% per year over 2010 to 2020. Despite this, the International Energy Agency and the African Development Bank Group estimate that in order for Africa to achieve universal energy access and meet its energy and climate goals, around $200 billion of investment is needed every year until 2030, more than double current annual investments. This gap is critical to Africa's energy transition.
The 2-week-long conference got underway with the World Climate Action Summit, which brought together 154 heads of state and government. The president of the UN General Assembly, Denise Francis, said climate action started with all of us, urging everyone to contribute to the collective effort of stabilizing the climate. At COP28, or the 28th session of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Francis stressed the world's shared responsibility in combating climate change, calling for a global re-evaluation of lifestyles and habits.
As our world continues to be challenged by multiple interconnected and cross-cutting crises, strategic leadership of the Global South is needed more than ever, particularly on climate change. Multifaceted crises permeate every corner of our planet, severely affecting every country and community. Yet these crises affect us all, though with varying impacts and on different scales. The severe economic, social, and environmental devastation from climate change create more debilitating consequences for developing countries, despite having made only a minuscule contribution to this crisis. Naturally, this is most worrisome in least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, that is, among the most vulnerable. It is therefore essential that COP28 delivers an ambitious series of climate action outcomes that reaffirm and strengthen the path to the 1.5-degree target, outcomes that accelerate adaptation to assist and support those most vulnerable, struggling on the front lines.
Parties reached a historic agreement on the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund and funding arrangements. The first time a substantive decision was adopted on the first day of the conference. Commitments to the fund started coming in moments after the decision was gravelled, totaling more than $700 million to date. There was more progress on the loss and damage agenda, with an agreement also reached that the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the UN Office for Project Services will host the Secretariat of the Santiago Network for Loss and Damage. This platform will catalyze technical assistance to developing countries that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change.